Hello? Hello? Are you here? Are you here? Well, that's the question. What's the answer? The audience says, yes, you're here. It's the Paul Leslie Hour, episode number 1017. Today we're joined by a great political mind, Tricia McLaughlin. Tricia's a woman with courage, perseverance, tenacity, and above all, dedication. And she's got great hair and a beautiful smile. You may have seen Tricia McLaughlin on TV, NewsNation, Fox News, NBC, commenting on the latest in the political world. Tricia has a tremendous broadcast presence. Like I said, she's even got great hair. And ladies and gentlemen, you can help support our presence and our hair. Simply visit www.thepaulleslie.com/support and give yourself and others the gift of stories. And now, what do you say we roll right into the interview?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited to be joined by this woman. She is a brilliant political commentator. She rose to fame. A lot of you began seeing her when she was the senior advisor and communications director for Vivek Ramaswamy's 2024 campaign. I enjoyed meeting her, and one of our past guests, the author Roger L. Simon, he commented on how impressed he was with Vivek Ramaswamy, and then noting how impressed he was with Tricia McLaughlin. So thank you very much for making the time to visit with us.
Oh, thank you, Paul. What a generous introduction. I really appreciate it. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely, our pleasure. Did you always have this interest in the political world?
I probably had some semblance of an interest since I was in, I would say, high school. I remember for one of my government classes in high school, I think junior or senior year, we were told we needed to go to a debate on collective bargaining with, I think it was state senators at the time. And I became pretty captivated there and then I went to school at University of Maryland, just outside of DC, and immediately kind of wanted to get involved politically. So I think I've always a little bit had that bug. So my parents are not, overtly political, but definitely pay attention to the news. So that we were exposed pretty young.
And Tricia, do you think that Americans today, are they having faith in the political process? Where do you think people are?
Good. That's a good question. No, I don't think they do. I think that we've had, the degradation of almost every major institution. I think, 2020 with the election, obviously with COVID and the question surrounding the validity, I mean, that's pretty paramount to our republic in general. I think that the courts, obviously, with what we've just seen, I think people on the left and right both have major consternation there. Congress, I mean, for a long time, there's been a lack of trust. And of course, I mean, with the media itself, I think it's great that people like you and independent journalists and podcasters, I do think that is an advantage that we've seen in social media, is that there can be more independent research. We don't have to be, so reliant on the forces that be that are these mega conglomerate news outlets. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to think of an institution, Paul, that hasn't, that the American people really still have trust in. I think probably the last remaining is probably the Supreme Court.
Yeah, very interesting stuff. Well, you mentioning independent media, I think it brings up a really good point. Vivek Ramaswamy, it seems like he threw a wrench in the whole way in which campaigns were run. He was just so open to communication. What do you think conservatives can learn going forward from the way Vivek ran that campaign and the relationship with the media?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was an evolving relationship with the media. I think always skeptical at the beginning, but right, people didn't know who Vivek Ramaswamy was, much less were they able to say his name. So being everywhere, whether it be big media or more niche, was a necessity. And I think that's part of our social media strategy too, was amplifying every single thing he did to make it feel like he was everywhere all the time, which in some cases he very much was. But I mean, I think, right, as time went on, I think in the summer he was kind of this new, fresh, and he became the media darling. I mean, even there was some positive pieces. I mean, there was, of course, the negative classic New York Times pieces that we'd all expect if you're even talking about even a moderate Republican, they probably would still go after. But in Vivek's case, he very much, was not, is more of that firebrand, is kind of iconoclast, and that really ruffles the media establishment. So we saw that early on, but I think as time went on, and I think he was saying more things that made people uncomfortable. I mean, even more of your establishment conservative media was starting to have heartache with him. But I mean, I think what Vivek did so brilliantly, and I think that not everyone is, capable right off the bat like Vivek is, but I think we can all learn from, is like he very much just questioned the premise of the premise of the question from the reporters, what was assumed. I mean, there was this very viral moment with a Washington Post reporter, her questioning him about white supremacy and why he wouldn't condemn it. And he didn't, take that at face value. I think that's the trap conservatives always often fall into, is that we kind of buy into the premise, and then there's no right answer for us. But I think he's probably the best communicator, at least of my generation, and I think of many generations. So I think he's uniquely able to navigate those questions. But I think a lot of conservatives, whether they be politicians or just people talking across the dinner table, can learn from that.
Absolutely. And I think it's so interesting, this idea that he had. Many people will answer the question that is, if you answer this question, you will lose. And he would
Yes.
always challenge the premise of the question if the question was false.
Yes, agree.
But
Which so often it is
right,
these
e-
days.
exactly. Well, this is, I guess, the big question. What do you think Vivek Ramaswamy's future will be, if you could speculate?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think he would close the door to, a political run in the future. He's got the energy for it. I mean, it, being a presidential candidate, much less someone who went from zero name ID to almost universal name ID in the course of a year, is not an easy feat. So I think that we it was his first time learning, or running for office, so there was a ton of learnings, but as a candidate, but also as a campaign. So I mean, I think the door is open to 2028, 2032, but I think in the meantime, he's going to do everything he can to help President Trump get reelected, and we'll see if there could be, if November goes the way we hope it goes, maybe there'll be a spot for Vivek somewhere in that administration. But I mean, Vivek's an ambitious guy and he wants to serve, so I think that there's going to be a lot of great options for him.
Well, we have this supposed debate that'll be coming up in just a couple weeks now. We'll see
Yeah.
if it really happens, but what idea or issue do you see making or breaking this 2024 election?
I mean, it's got to be the economy, right? In my opinion, because so rarely do we get to, I mean, uh, not since maybe Cleveland, have we been able to see two presidents face off against each other. We actually have
Right.
records that we get to look at. And I think, I mean, the difficulty with the Biden administration, and I think it's something that they very much failed at, is they're continue to tell people don't believe what you experience or what you see, believe what we tell you. And when you cherry pick data to say, oh, the economy is going great, our unemployment's really great, but you're leaving out major factors like our wages growing, what is actually, they use core inflation, so they don't include gas prices or food prices in that. Well, I mean, like, everyone has to eat, and gas obviously is so essential not only for our own transportation but for the transportation of goods, and that's going to be passed on to the consumers. It's really a smokescreen, and I think people don't appreciate that. But also, I mean, it's the economy's stupid. It does come down to that. And prior to COVID, it was great under President Trump. So I think the debates will be interesting. I do fear Republicans, we're going to lower the bar so much for Joe Biden, saying he's like, he can't even string together a sentence. He won't be able to walk off stage. That if he clears that very low bar, it'll be viewed as a win. And so I think we need to be very careful when in doing that.
Well, this is another big question. I've been asking a lot of people this, and it's been very interesting to see their answers. Will Biden be on the ballot in 2024 come November? What do you think?
I waffled back and forth on this so many times, Paul.
Hmm.
I just think the cake is already baked. I mean, I don't know if you can. I mean, look, the convention for them isn't until August, so they do. I mean, if he has a horrible debate in June, I do think that they have some time to maybe clean it up, maybe make some health concerns as an excuse, which honestly, those health concerns are also probably very real. It doesn't make sense to me to put up somebody who already their poll numbers are tanking and the American people simply don't trust and has a very abysmal record. That being said, I think, Paul, I think he's going to be on the ballot. I think the cake is baked. But
Yeah.
maybe I'm wrong.
The thing that's been interesting to me is that when I've asked people who are Democrats, you know, the one thing that they don't tend to do is defend Biden. They just, it's just kind of like, yep, he's the guy. So,
But status quo, like they're going with it. Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah.
Now, switching over to Trump, do you have any predictions on who the vice president might be, or even
I
who
don't
you
know
would
if he
like?
knows yet who I would like. I mean, I would obviously, I think, not to play identity politics, but I do think having a woman would be helpful, just given I think
Mhm.
Democrats will try to make two things the major lines of attack, which will be the Trump trials and abortion. I think it would be helpful probably to have a woman because even just the messaging aspect, it would be helpful. The Trump trials, right? Just because the Democrats, especially with this New York one, with this New York verdict, they love to bring up the salacious details, which have absolutely nothing to do with the case itself. But of course, they want to drop affair and porn star and make it very tabloidy. So I think having a woman, defend it would be helpful. But really, whatever will broaden the base, right? People talk
Right.
about Nikki Haley. I don't love that idea. I don't think it's even on the table at this point. But Trump, Trump loves to surprise people, so I guess we'll find out in July.
That's true.
Do you have any predictions yourself?
I'm thinking it's going to be Marco Rubio. That's my gut instinct. Yeah,
That's it. I mean, good
yeah.
guess.
I was going to ask, do you think Nikki Haley has a political future at this point?
Probably. I mean, maybe as I think that Trump would probably put her in the cabinet. But
Yeah.
the thing about that is she would probably only accept Secretary of State or Vice President. So that kind of narrows the field.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I do think she's young. I think she's very ambitious. She's pretty cunning. I mean, obviously, I mean, she did well And
Yeah.
there's no question about it. People did underestimate her. She, wore that T-shirt that said "Don't underestimate me." I mean, I'll give it to her. People did underestimate her, and I mean, even Indiana, where was very much Trump country. She, even though she wasn't running anymore, she was still on the ballot and had 24% in the primary. That's impressive. So I think she has a future.
Well, I appreciate you telling me like it is. Do you see the Trump campaign making any mistakes right now?
I think that the only thing that really sticks out to me is what I kind of mentioned with the big focus on fumbling Biden.
Hmm.
I think, yeah, people are watching Biden self-implode, and it seems to be more and more rapid. But again, I don't want us to lower the bar so much that he clears it come a debate, because he does. I mean, whether it be chemical or adrenaline, I would argue likely chemical, even though I don't have actual evidence. He does. I mean, when it comes to State of the Union or, any of the big major speeches he's given, I mean, he seems angry, but at least he seems conscious.
Right. Yeah, which would point to chemical. How do you handle an aggressive interviewer? I saw when you were on with Kristen Welker, and she was just really like, I mean, you want to talk about asking questions that the premise is false, but you just did it so well. How do you do
Oh,
it?
thank you, Paul. Yeah. Vivek, again, I think he gave a great example with that, is you challenge the premise. I mean, she was talking a lot about January 6th, and obviously, people have very different opinions on that. Different Republicans have opinions on it. But I think that she was just making total assumptions and accepting them as fact. And she was doing that also with, Vivek's argument with the great replacement theory. And I mean, I think that the number one thing with January 6th was that we don't have all the facts in front of us. So to even pretend as an interviewer like you do is just false. So I mean, and that's such a disservice to your audience. So I mean, I think I tried to point that out, and hopefully somewhat successfully.
So why do you do it? Is there a greater purpose to the work that you do?
Oh, absolutely. And Paul, I assume, the same with you. I love this country. I think we were raised to be very patriotic. The 4th of July was my grandfather's favorite holiday, and it was definitely very much celebrated in our family. And I think, you know, as we've gotten older, I think we're starting to see our country is not the same country that we grew up in, and then that it isn't cool to love this country. It's cool to love another country, but not your own. And I think that doesn't bode well for this country's future. And I do think that the media is very culpable in a lot of what we're seeing, the division in this country. And I mean, of course, I think we can always harp on the left, and Joe Biden is himself responsible, and so is, so many other politicians, but Republicans themselves are not. We can't escape blame here either. And I think it's very important to stand up and say what you believe the truth is. So that's what I try to do. And I was felt very strongly about it on Vivek's campaign. I think the most important part of that campaign to me was that he was saying things that were uncomfortable, made people on the left and right uncomfortable, but they were the right things to stand by. And I think especially he talks about there being a void of God in this country, and that something does fill that void. And right now, that's in our culture, that's really these toxic left wing, almost religions.
Yeah,
And so I think that was a great lesson for me. And I think even though my time, I still work with Vivek, but I've gone on to do other things, but it's something that, whoever I work with and whatever I continue doing, that's something that I think is important to stand for.
absolutely. Well, what are your dreams for the future? What do you see happening down the line with Tricia McLaughlin?
That is a good question and something I'm still trying to figure out. I feel like I recently got off this roller coaster of this presidential campaign, which was 18-hour days, 7 days a week. So it's been nice to spend time with family and have a personal life again and see friends. But as far as professionally, I recently started a firm in April. So I've been working with different organizations, nonprofits, political candidates, and then stuff in the private sector as well. So that's been, definitely heartening and something gratifying, something I've enjoyed doing. But I mean, I would be lying, Paul, if I didn't still have the political bug. I'd love to jump in somewhere again at some point, but just take this breather here for a bit. But cross our fingers for November and onward.
There's a song called The House I Live In, and the song poses the question again and again, what is America to me? So what is America to you?
I love that question. I think America is opportunity, and is that you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you can seize opportunity not based on your class or the color of your skin or any of these factors that are out of your control. But I think that this is the country where you can achieve everything that you want to with hard work and dedication. But we're not, at least we weren't, and I think we can return to it, where there are these external factors holding us back that I think so often in other countries are. It is a country of rebels, and I think that hopefully that's part of what we're seeing now, but that we'll get back to who we really are as a people.
Very well said. Well, everybody out there, be sure and follow Tricia on Twitter. I still call it Twitter. It's at Tricia Ohio, right?
It's at Tricia Ohio, yes.
That's right. Tricia, not the other way that people
Not the
spell
other
it.
way, no ass.
Yeah. So any last words here for our audience? Totally open-ended.
No, I think that it's great that your viewers look for, alternative voices and people who they trust, like yourself, Paul, because like I said at the very first question is, we're at kind of a fork in the road with the country where it's difficult to find voices and people who you trust, who are not just, force feeding you the narrative that's most convenient to them. So kudos to them. And thank you for watching and for having me, Paul.
It's a great pleasure. You're a proponent of free speech. That's very evident with all the things that you tweet and every time you come on television shows. And it's always good to hear your perspectives. Thank you so much for spending time with us. It's a great honor.
Thank you, Paul.
All right.
We thank you and appreciate you dropping in for the Paul Leslie Hour today. You can help the Paul Leslie Hour in our mission to provide independent media content like this by visiting www.thepaulleslie.com/support. We truly thank you. This is your announcer speaking. Performance of The Entertainer intro song and Corina outro song, courtesy of John Primorano. Well, that's it for today. So until next time, be safe and be good.